Hi, everybody. It's Julie Henricus. Happy Saturday. I'll try to get myself so that Instagram, I'm a little bit more centered. I hope you're having a good day. Today is day 6 of the Muse Mapping mini trainings. And today's conversation is going to be about the 5th step of the process, which is called staying the course. So the first step is preparing for the journey. But let me back up. Muse mapping is designed, a system I've designed, so that when in your creative journey, you can look at a blank piece of paper and you can create a map that will allow you to not only navigate your creative journey, but to navigate it successfully and to stay on track. And I think too often we think, oh, I want to write. I've been called to the muse. I'm going to do it. And we burn out, or we're afraid to start, or we have doubts at some point, so we abandon the project. Or maybe you started something a long time ago. You used to play an instrument, or you used to act, or you used to paint, or whatever it is. And you gave it up for whatever reason. And now you're longing to have that feeling back, right? That wonderful feeling of creating. And you're not sure how to start. So Muse Mapping is a system I've created to help folks start on their creative journey or restart their creative journey. And the steps so far we've talked about are preparing for the journey itself, which is some self-exploration, figuring out your why, really figuring out the pillars that are going to guide you on your journey. The second step is dealing with Bob, dealing with the beliefs, the obstacles, and the blocks that are in your way, and that don't necessarily go away. You can't say, oh, fear, thank you so much, we're done. It's always going to come back, but how you deal with it and building up the tools to deal with it are part of what the journey needs to be. The third step is doing some research on where you are. So the 3 C's I talked about were community, your craft, and the channels that you can use to get your work out there. And research is a helpful tool, finding out what the journey is really going to be like instead of imagining it on your own. The 4th step is drafting a plan, and we talked about that yesterday. I've done these mini trainings all week long, and they're on my YouTube channel, they're on my Facebook page, Your Ladders. They're in my Facebook group, which I invite you all to join, Awakening the Muse Within. They're also on IGTV. But the 4th step, drafting a plan. So I think a lot of folks start at step 4, and I'm going to offer that I think those first 3 steps will help you draft the plan. Today is about navigating rough waters and how, once you got your plan and you start, how do you deal with the stuff that comes up that makes it tricky? Because stuff does make it tricky. So the rough waters that I talked about, again, with these Muse Mapping mini trainings, I'll give you an overview of what the step is, and then I'm going to give you a mini training or thought on one of the steps. So the things that I'm talking about with dealing with rough waters are things like dealing with criticism, rejection, and bullies in the field. They can be external factors. They can, you put your work out there and it doesn't receive the applause or the acclaim you wanted it to be, or you have offered somebody a draft of your work or shown them a monologue you're working on, or something like that, and they don't give you the support. How do you deal with that? Because some criticism is good and helpful and helps. Some of it's really toxic. So how do you separate the two? How do you deal with bullies who are just, oh, you can't do this, you don't have the talent, you don't, and they could be well-meaning bullies who just don't want you to risk it. They're afraid for you of failure. And I'm going to offer that I think the worse than failure is not trying. Right? Regret is much worse than failure. Failure is something you can build on and you can learn from. Not that it doesn't hurt, not that you don't need a moment, but it's that sort of thing. So criticism, rejection, bullies. The other thing that I talk about, or I'd like to talk about, and I will talk about a lot more in the Muse Mapping program, as far as this goes, is you need to own your own journey. we compare ourselves to other people and we think, oh, they did it this way, so I should do it this way. And I don't necessarily think that that's true. As a matter of fact, most of the time, I don't think that's true. In your research phase, you will be talking to people. And in this phase, you'll be talking to people who are already on the journey you want to go on. And they can tell you, this is how I did it. But we all navigate our journeys our own way and with our own intent. So I don't want you to compare yourself to other people. I want you to own your own journey and your own path with the knowledge, with the preparation, with all the other tools that Muse Mapping has given you. And I also talk about the need to align our lives with our creative intention. So when you're a writer, we can pretend we're not doing things. Being a writer or being a visual artist, sorry, is a little bit easier to pretend we're not doing. But when, if you have a burning passion to be an actor, you need to align your life with that. You need to own it in your life. Let people know that that's what you want to do. Be prepared for people who don't understand it and who question you. But also, by aligning your life, I'm talking about making time for it, creating space for it, offering, sort of claiming your space as whatever your creative journey is, letting folks know about it. You don't have to, get a tattoo or wave a flag, but you can just sort of say, oh, I'm sorry, I'd love to do that on Saturday afternoon, but I'm actually going to be working on my book. Or I'm actually going to be working on my monologue with my coach. Or I'm going to be taking a dance lesson or a music lesson. Or I'm going to be spending it outside sketching because I have some work I want to do this winter, and now's the time. This is the light that I need to sketch. So owning that you're doing this and being comfortable with that is another part of navigating these, preparing to stay the course and navigating some of these rough waters. So the one lesson that I want to talk about today, that I talk about with folks a lot, is that I don't all too often. So in my creative journey, I'm a published mystery writer. I've also worked in the performing arts for over 30 years, and I've worked in a lot of different areas. I teach theater management. I've worked as a general manager in the box office. I've done a lot of different things. I've run a venue, all kinds of things in the performing arts. And I've worked very closely with artists in a lot of different capacities. And for myself, I've learned this lesson. For you, I want to offer this lesson. There's some people who will join Muse Mapping, the program, and they'll want to make this their life. And I think that that's certain, and their career and how they earn their living. And I don't want to discourage anyone from doing this. But what I want to do is let you know, as a creative person, you need to separate having a successful creative life, a successful creative practice, from earning a living or from making any money whatsoever. You cannot measure the success of your life as a creative person by how much money it earns you. Our society does not support artists the way they should, the way that there aren't avenues and revenue streams and ways of supporting yourself that there are in other countries. There's if you're in certain industries, so I'm in the publishing industry, it's a long game. It's not a short home run. Some people hit the short home run and they make $1 million advance and they do all those things. But most people plug away, sell books, sell more books, build a career. And that career over time may make money, but I can't, from just speaking for myself, I can't measure my success as a writer by how much money my books make. They're two different worlds. One is as a writer, one is as a published author. Those are two separate things, right? So we need to separate our practice, our creative practice, our creative journey from monetary success or from regular sources of success. And I think that's really important to understand. Otherwise, you're going to feel unsuccessful even when you're doing things and you're very successful, right? There are actors who are cast in 3 or 4 shows a year in mid-sized theater companies who can't survive on those paychecks alone. So by any measure, they have a successful acting career, but monetarily, they can't support themselves. Doesn't mean they're a failure. It really doesn't. It means that they're separating the journey, and part of the journey of being a creative person, and part of the journey if you want to be a practicing artist who gets your work out there, is figuring out how to make it all work. And for most people, that's side gigs or, different ways of using your talent. And we'll talk about that in the tomorrow in our next lesson. But just be ready. I want you to really think about that and make sure you separate that, because otherwise you're not being kind to yourself. And that will also, if you're measuring your success by how much money you make, that's going to lead to burnout, and you're going to abandon what gives you joy. And I don't want to see you do that as well. So that is just an overview of preparing to stay the course. Obviously in Muse Mapping, we'll go into that a lot more. So let me tell you a little bit about Muse Mapping. It's starting on November 18th. That's the launch of the entire program. And it's going to run through the beginning of the new year. It's going to be 8 separate weeks with lessons based on the system that I've set up. They're going to include video lessons, they're going to include worksheets and work you can do on your own, and then weekly group coaching calls. We're going to get some one-on-one coaching and support from other people. I'm also going to create a private Facebook group for the folks in Muse Mapping so that they can talk to each other and they can support each other. So the idea is, though this is a busy time of year, I know a lot of us are thinking about 2020 and the goals and this new decade that we're launching. And so how can you start 2020 off right? How can you support your creative journey right away? And I think that going through Muse Mapping, which will run through the first week of January, will help you do exactly that. It will get you started. Once you sign up for Muse Mapping, you'll have access to the lessons forever, so that you can go back and refresh yourself. There's no behind. And I just also want to offer to you that starting is the hardest thing. I'm somebody who has set some goals for myself that were not comfortable goals, especially around athletic pursuits. And showing up at that first training session to get ready to run a half marathon was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, right? Standing on that starting line is hard. Winning the race, all that training, all that support, all of the things that I had learned came into being, but you got to muster it yourself. So if you've always wanted to do something creative, and by creative it can be quilting, it can be designing, there's so many things, but something you felt the muse calling you at some point and you haven't answered the call, or you put it on snooze for whatever reason, or you're on a creative journey and you're no longer inspired, or you're frustrated, or you want to try something new and you're not sure how to figure that out, that's what Muse Mapping's for. It's to help you create your own map and move forward. So I really hope that you'll join me. If you go to musemapping.com, you can fill out an application. At the end, before you submit the application, click on the link to set up a time to talk to me, and then you can submit the application and I'll tell you more about it, and we can make sure it's a good fit, because this is a time investment, this is a financial investment, and I get that, and I want you to have an opportunity to talk to me, and we can talk about what your goals are for the program and how Muse Mapping it may be a good fit. And I think it will be for a lot of folks, because being on a creative journey is joyful, and it makes life technicolor, and it gives you something else to focus on and to think about, and a new lens on things. It's a really, really wonderful and joyful journey. So I hope that you will consider joining Muse Mapping and reach out and talk to me. But also, if this is the first time you've seen one of these trainings, as I said, this is day 6, and I'm going through Sunday and Monday as well. So catch up on the other ones, because every one of them has something you can work on. And I've been doing them at 1 o'clock every day. Tomorrow, I have a family event, and I think it would be awkward for me to try and do this at the event. So I'll be doing it earlier in the day. But if you go to my Facebook page, then the video will be there if you come on at 1. And also, once I get them captioned, I make them IGTV and YouTube videos. So, you know, you'll still have access to the pearls of wisdom that I will drop tomorrow. I am thinking 10:30 in the morning. 10:30, yeah, I'll commit to that. 10:30 in the morning instead of 1 o'clock, and I will see you there. Have a fabulous Saturday. Go back and watch the other videos. Think about your own Muse Mapping journey, and again, reach out if you have any questions. Thanks so much for being here. Bye now.